Thanks everybody for coming this morning. Before we start, we want to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I think everybody knows why we're here. It's an organizational meeting, first meeting of the new board, and the purpose of the meeting is to, for the board to elect their officers. And before we get started, I wanted to read you a little bit about that from the bylaws. Officers and elections. The executive officers of the association shall be a president and one or more vice presidents who must be directors of the association, as well as a treasurer and secretary, all of whom shall be elected annually by majority vote of the board of directors. Any officer may be removed with or without cause by vote of a majority of all the directors at any meeting. Except the president may hold two or more offices, the board of directors shall from time to time appoint such other officers as designated their powers and duties as the board shall find to be required to manage the affairs of the association. If the board so determines there may be more than one vice president, the officers may delegate their duties and responsibilities. So here's a brief description of each officer role. President. The president shall preside at all meetings of membership and board and sign all leases, mortgages, deeds, and other written instruments, and perform such other duties as may be required by the board. The president shall be a member of the board. Vice president. The vice president shall act in the place and stead of the president in the event of absence, inability, or refusal to act of the president and perform such other duties as may be required by the board. And today we will be electing a second vice president, and the role of the second vice president would be, in the case the president is out, vice president moves up, second vice president, his first duty would be to take that VP role. His second responsibility will be to act as a liaison to the general manager. Secretary. The secretary shall record the votes and keep the minutes of all meetings and proceedings of membership and the board. Keep the corporate seal of the association and affix it on all papers required to be sealed. Serve notice of meetings of the board and of membership. Keep appropriate current records showing the names of members of the association together with their address, and perform such other duties as required by the board. And a lot of those things are authorized to be delegated, and the general manager works closely with the secretary to carry out those duties. Treasurer. The treasurer shall cause to be received and deposited in appropriate bank accounts all monies of association, and shall disperse such funds as directed by the board. Sign or cause to be signed all checks and promissory notes of the association. Cause to be kept proper books of account and accounting records required pursuant to the provisions of section 702.303 of the Florida statutes. Cause to be prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, all financial reports required by the Florida statutes, and perform such other duties as required by the board. That position as well works close with the management company as well as the general manager. So the first position we are going to vote for today is the board president. And what I'm going to do is pass out forms for everybody to mark their votes on. We are all going to use the same pens, so if you have a pen, just please put them aside, and that way it will remain secret. And here we go.
Error on this. Unless someone has told me something. That's a problem. Yeah. You got one wrong spoon.
No, I saved it for you, right? Oh, yeah. All right, man. I was sitting back right there, I can't see anything. I have to see anything. I said, well, there you go.
And when you're done, if you would just hand the floor to me.
We haven't had nominations. What are we?
Yeah. Do you want to do the nomination? Wait, we'll do it more. I'll get that. Do you want to go do the nomination?
Yes.
We failed to announce that we do have quorum. So if you want to make a nomination.
At this time, I would like to nominate. At this time, I'd like to nominate Don Wells as the president of the board.
Second.
William Tubb seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a reason to do this?
Yes. It's
Who seconded it?
I didn't see who seconded it.
Tubbs.
I think we have a point of order in it. Discussion and then we vote.
Is there any discussion? Mark your ballots, please.
Any other more nominations?
Any other nominations?
I move all nominations cease.
William Tubb moved all nominations cease.
I will second that motion.
Molly Nutt seconded the motion.
Requires a 2/3 majority vote.
On the ballot.
No.
On the count of three, mark your ballot.
2/3 vote.
All those in favor to cease vote?
All those in favor is to cease. Thank you.
Jerry needs to brush up on his
The vote results are Don Wells, 7 votes, unanimous. So Don Wells has been elected as president of the association.
I'd just like to say it's an ominous job. It's not something I'm going to do alone, and I see my job as 1/7, and I see another 1/7 sitting around me to perform this task for the board.
Okay, the second office to be elected is first vice president, and we're seeking a nomination.
Nominate Marilyn Stout.
Bill Tubbs nominated Marilyn Stout. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any other nominations?
First time we didn't practice this ahead of
Sorry.
Move to close
Yeah.
nominations.
Move to close the nominations.
I
Jeez.
so move.
All in favor?
You're following the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Marilyn Stout has received 7 votes. She has been elected as first vice president.
Thank you.
The next nomination or election would be for second vice president. nomination, please?
I move that we have Al Roper as the second vice president liaison to retain his position as liaison with the.
Second.
Discussion?
I have discussion on that, please. Just a point of order on the liaison's position. Since they're not defined for me as a new member, I would like to defer appointing any liaison right now until we have our first meeting, so we can at least get a scope and description of what that job is, and that could be unappointed because it is not within, a liaison isn't within our docs, I believe, so that should be something that'd be an appointment with other liaisons at the first general meeting. If the members are in agreement to that.
Further
So we
discussion?
vote on second vice president, no problem.
Further discussion?
I agree with that. Because this isn't policy, it's not in the docs. The vice president is the liaison.
That's correct. I believe this is going on precedent from last year's organizational meeting, but it is not in the docs.
It was a second organizational, it wasn't the organizational meeting, and it was an appointment as a liaison. It was not, we appointed a vice president, the second vice president strictly as a second vice president. It was after that, the appointment for the liaison, so that one person would have interaction with the GM, so that all seven of us wouldn't be trooping in and out of your office and taking up more time. We would rely on one individual besides the president of the association to do interactions with you, especially with the GM, especially on issues of construction, on day-to-day activities that needed to be done. So he could then, that person could then relate to other members of the board who tie up less time with the GM. It has never been officially defined as a position with the regulations. It was as a liaison or as a committee head has been. It has strictly been as a conduit from the GM to the other board members.
Well, I certainly do. We'll have other discussion. Please, Don.
There is a charter that was specifically written for that position, as there was, yes, there is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
As there was for all the committees. Each committee has a charter. So to defer that till we discuss organizations of committees, I think is appropriate.
Okay, well then, I think the resolution is just redefining or amending my announcement of that position's responsibility. And it would simply be is to serve as the backup for the first vice president until the board resolves otherwise. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Any further nominations? Motion to cease further nominations?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, there was a simultaneous second. Marilyn, okay.
Al Roper has received 7 votes, so he has been elected unanimously as second vice president. The next election will be for board secretary. You have a motion?
Treasurer, I thought was next.
I have on the agenda secretary.
Okay.
The next election will be treasurer.
I second.
Discussion? All in favor? We have additional nominations.
I've never heard of it.
Move to cease.
Move to cease, a second.
Second.
in favor?
Oh, whoa, slow down. Can you move to see?
I did.
Discussion. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
William Tubb has received 7 votes and unanimous elected as board treasurer. Then the last elected position will be for board secretary. We have a nomination.
I'd like to nominate Molly Knotts.
Second, if she's willing to accept.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Molly Knotts has received 7 votes and unanimously elected as secretary. The next order of business, I believe we would need a motion to add an agenda item to discuss landscape committee chairperson.
And can we also add onto the agenda a motion on a resolution to recognize the leading board members?
Move both things be added to the party.
Second,
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first order of business, I think I'm going to turn it over to our president at this point, and I'll be happy to assist with that. You want to announce the business item?
Well, the first item to be discussed is chairperson for the landscape committee. I've been away for a week, and I understand that Ernie Giordano is stepping down from that position, and if someone is more advised to exactly what is going on with that, I would defer to them.
So on March 7th, 2 days ago, Ernie submitted his resignation as landscape committee chairperson. He did volunteer to work through the transition until the board selected a landscape chairperson to take his place. And I believe the discussion today is going to be on to resolve that. We do have someone that is interested in acting as an interim chairperson and may or may not want to be the permanent chairperson, but they're willing to act in that role until the board makes that appointment. And Don, I would leave it to you. You know that person.
Does anyone have anything they would like to add to that?
Yeah, I've spoken with both Ernie Giordano and Allison Johnson. I believe the only other person left on that committee is Babu Matthews. Allison worked for Florida Evergreen. She's quite knowledgeable in plants, how to maintain them. I think she would be an excellent interim chairperson of that committee. Also, she stated that she would like to go several months. If she likes the position, if we like her in that position, she'd be willing to continue. If we put out a blast asking for other volunteers and someone more qualified volunteers, she's more than happy to step down. Either way it can go. So I we should allow Allison to take over for Ernie at this point.
Well then, any other discussion?
First, I'd like to thank Allison for doing that. I think that's very, very helpful. I just reiterate that I think it would be in all of our best interests to make sure that the entire community is informed that we're looking for someone to be dedicated to this landscaping committee and request volunteers. The landscaping committee can grow, I believe, and that's an area we can discuss in the next meeting.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate what everyone said is thank you to Allison for stepping up. But now we have a committee of two, and I don't think a committee of two is a functional committee to meet the needs. So at some point, we have to, I guess, accelerate the requests for people on boards. But again, newly sitting on the board, I don't see or have never seen, even when I was landscape chair, roles and responsibilities and things that we're expecting of chairs and members. So even though if we do place her in, because we do need a functioning person, we need to sit down and come up with policies and procedures for these people so they have an idea of what is expected of them. So we have our work cut out for us with all the boards, or committees I should say, as to how we want them to function in the future.
I think it would be good, and I'd like to request that our general manager provide all the board members with a copy of the charters for each committee so that you know what was written and what we have in the past. And as with anything, I consider them working documents, and if there are things that you think we should, change, increase, enhance, remove, I think that would certainly be appropriate and be an item certainly on the agenda for the very next meeting.
And can I add just a note that perhaps through the eyes and ears that we encourage other residents to join some of these committees?
Well, I think this is an excellent opportunity. We have a new board, we have new membership, and I see that as a challenge for us and a challenge to the community to, now that we've wanted some things. Now I want to see that you want to be willing to volunteer and to assist us. We are only 7 people here, and the community runs with an efficient general manager, and as many hands-on that he can have, the better. It's a lot easier to sit back and say, well, what we should do, but we need people that can say what I will do. And I'm certainly encouraging all of you to please step up to the plate. We'd like it.
I think what I heard Scott saying, though, is not just that they need a charter for the committee, but that we need like a job description for the committee chair and a job description for committee members, so that those individuals know on their committee what's expected of them and what they can expect from us.
What I planned on doing was including those in the charter themselves, and I have an open task myself to review every committee charter and make recommendations for amendments, and I will accelerate that.
Is it now proper for me to make a motion to, oh, sorry.
Should we vote on Allison?
Okay, do I hear a motion or a resolution to select Allison for an interim landscape committee chairperson?
Second that?
Would be a second, okay. Okay, well, can I see a show of hands of all those? Is there any more discussion? We've had discussion. Was there any more discussion? And could I see a show of hands of those who are in favor of that? Be so moved and noted that Allison Johnson will now act as our interim landscape committee chair, as a committee of 2, which we all recognize is not sufficient.
Should we nominate Babu as vice chair?
And then I assume that, Jerry, you will make the appropriate notification.
Absolutely.
Is it proper at this time for me to make a motion to adopt a resolution recognizing the board members who are leaving? And if I may, I will read it into the record.
Whereas Joe Kilrain, President, Frank Hannigan, Treasurer, and Jason Ward, Director, have served on the Sandoval Board of Directors with distinction. And whereas each of these gentlemen have put in countless hours of dedicated service to the Sandoval community. And whereas the Sandoval community has benefited greatly by their service and expertise, which has made our community a better place to live. Therefore, be it resolved that the Sandoval Board of Directors on this 9th of March, 2019, recognizes and honors these gentlemen for their many contributions to the Sandoval community, which will be signed by the Board of
Is
Directors.
there a second to that resolution?
I second.
If there is a discussion, then we can call the question, and would we have a show of hands of vote of those who are in favor of this resolution? This resolution has been passed, and I would like that to be included in the minutes of the meeting for today. And in addition, I would like each director to sign one copy, and I'll pass around. Actually, Ron, why don't you start with your copy and just pass it around the table so that we'll have it as an official document. If I might take the liberty to just make a couple of comments and challenge my fellow board members for our first meeting coming up. We've got several problems that we need to resolve in the community. I'm going to mention a couple, and I'm going to mention some suggestions. These are not definites. These are just suggestions, but I want to get everyone's mind working, so they'll be on the agenda for next meeting. We have a sunshade situation that we need to have resolved. We have an expansion or building program that we need to resolve. We have Taylor Morrison negotiations that we need to also manage appropriately. And those are three big areas, and we also have capital improvement items. And I would like to challenge my fellow board members to possibly come up with 2 members of the board taking on each one of these big responsibilities. And the reason I say 2, because I think 2 is a minimum and 3 is the maximum, because we have a quorum if we have 4. Take one of these areas of responsibility and then solicit the community for volunteers to form a special committee. We have standing committees and special committees to vet the problem, vet the issue, and come up with a solution and be a guide to formulating a final conclusion or how we're going to resolve this. And as I say, this is a working thing. It's something I've been thinking about, and it's certainly not doctrine, but some way that we have a point of responsibility to get these things done. So for our next meeting, I'd like that on the agenda, but I just wanted you to start thinking about it because, you know, the more thought we put in it, the better the result will be. And I'd also like to ask Jerry to provide a copy of the bylaws and covenants to every board member. I have a copy here that was given to me when I became a board member, and I don't think we followed through with that. Molly has a copy, I have a copy, and I don't think that Marilyn got a copy or Al got a copy last year, and I know the new folks haven't gotten a copy, but we all need these documents, and I have them in a notebook, which in the beginning I brought to each meeting, and now I'm still going to do it, but you all need them too. And you'll find that there's the covenants and the bylaws, and then there's been subsequent amendments. So with my copy, as I read these things, in fact, that's one of the challenges or requirements for every board member is you must read these covenants and bylaws and sign that you've read them within a short period of time after assuming this position. Additionally, there's a certification class that I think, is it the 14th?
I believe so, yeah.
That's taking place on the 14th.
With openings, and I could get volunteers.
And I would like to get all of us attending that have that day open.
There is on the 14th, I have 3 openings.
I have a conflict. I can attend the first hour, but not the second
Well,
hour. So,
Let's work that out, but it's, you know, that's something that you and Al did not go to last year, which we all attended as well, and I think, you know, the more knowledgeable you are, the less mistakes we're gonna make, and the better we're gonna work together, so.
That is this coming Thursday, 14th of March.
yes.
I'll send an email to all board members in the morning with the details for March and April, and then
was an April one also?
Yes,
If there's
Okay.
only 3 spots are available,
for
unfortunately.
the March ones are only.
Well, then fine, and we have slots available for April. Well, then, let's get that out to the board members to see who can go in.
Is there 3 additional spots, or have you booked?
I have booked 3 spots for March 14th, and they asked me Friday for the names. I told them it would be Monday, and then April is wide open, so whoever can't go in
I
March.
was saying, are there 3 additional spots for Thursday or not?
No, I have 3
Total of
spots,
3.
total of 3 available for us.
I didn't catch the time.
I don't have it off, I don't know.
Okay.
Did you recall?
I think it was 4 o'clock, but I'm not sure.
It was late afternoon.
Yeah.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
But I'm available on.
Then why don't we get an email out to all the board members, and then the first 3 that respond get the first 3 spots, and then the rest will try to go for the next one. So by the end of April, we'll all be certified. Okay.
Don, I will take on the responsibility of copying that booklet and providing it to you.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
It's a secretarial.
Okay, is there any other business that we need to discuss at the meeting?
I thought those suggestions for the next meeting for the agenda were excellent. I'd just like to add one item that I'd like to be on the agenda, and that's the CenturyLink account. I think there will be help us all to have some discussions on putting some protective measures and have a monthly financial statement on that account also. That's it. Thank you.
Well, that being said, I would like to say that, we need more financial data at the board meetings. I think that Jerry mentioned that when we did the interview for prospective general managers, that he changed the board meeting from the 3rd to the 4th of the month, 4th week of the month, because he wanted to make sure that they had the financials so they could be discussed. And that's something that I think we all would like to have. And Jim Swigert, for one, as a person that keeps us on our toes with that, and I think that he'd be happy with that as well.
If I could just bring one thing also to the table. Previously, when I've served, a lot of the boards had workshop sessions, and I know the city does committees of the whole, which is basically a workshop. And I've heard, sitting out in the audience from previous board members or current board members, that it's difficult when they get the packet the day before or the day of to review the items that are on the agenda. So what I'd like to do is just put out to the board to entertain that idea of having a workshop meeting. I know it's another layer of meetings, but I think we really could work towards getting things done for that upcoming month when we have a workshop meeting to discuss things, and then nobody will be left in the dark on the board as to what came up or they didn't have time to review the documents. So if we can look at a workshop meeting, possibly the week before our regularly scheduled to plan for the next month, I think that will really streamline things.
That, we can discuss that further, and I will forward you guys, the new board members, a copy of a schedule when I send them to the current board members, and it is 10 days in advance. Committee chairs are required to send me their reports and minutes. 7 days in advance, I send the board their board pack for the next week's meeting, and we can definitely schedule a workshop. We do have quorum issues that will be involved, and it will be an open meeting. So, yes.
And duly noticed.
Yeah, we,
Non-action meeting.
may I?
It's on now.
Okay, so we are stating that next month's meeting will be the 3rd Thursday, or this month's meeting will be the 3rd Thursday. However, we will look at during that time frame, during that meeting, at changing it to the 4th Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I did look at the meeting schedule before I sent that out, and I changed 2 dates. I believe it's 2 or 3 from the 3rd week of the month to the 4th to accommodate having the financials. There are a couple that are right on the edge, like I think a 17th meeting date or an 18th meeting date. But I feel with only a few like that, I can talk to the corporate office accountants and for those months get the financials on time. So I feel pretty comfortable.
If it's possible to change the board meeting to the 4th Thursday for even March, it would be very helpful to me. I will be in Tallahassee from the 18th to the 22nd. I serve on the Florida Commission on the Status of Women, and it's our first quarter meeting. We meet quarterly, and I really cannot miss being there. So it's just, if it's possible, if it's not, I hope you understand why I cannot attend.
And the last thing before the board makes that decision, I think it would be obvious, but there in the 4th, there will be some meetings as late as 25th, 26th, something like that, and realizing that we're looking at the previous month's financials, so it's going into what will feel like almost 2 months late, but that's, you know, it's a double-edged sword depending whichever way you go. So if you want to have the board make that decision, so I can, doesn't need to be a vote, but I need to know it so I can.
Does anybody have a problem? Does anyone have a problem with having the meeting on the 4th week of March instead of on the 3rd? It postpones some things that we're going to talk about for a week, but.
Yeah, I need to double check reservations for this room. But barring that, it's valuable for me to know that the board agrees, so I can go ahead and execute.
Gary, is Gary?
You'll be gone. Then I think you probably leave it the way it is.
Sorry, no.
Yeah, because others are not going to be able to make it.
Well, we have six.
We have six.
We have six on the 21st.
Oh, the 4th, you won't be, the 28th. Okay, good.
Leaving it on the 21st.
Okay. And then changing to the 4th and starting in April, or leaving?
No, I just mentioned that I just said that you mentioned that because you wanted to make sure that the financials were available. I wasn't advocating changing it. I was just saying you had done it.
That's correct. You're right.
When the agenda comes out, because you're asking for people to volunteer on different committees, would it be all right if I sent something to Jerry to indicate what I might like to serve on?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Does any other board member have comments?
Could I ask that at our board meeting, since we're going to have the financials a week before our board meeting, that financials be provided to the community at the same time, hard copies with the agendas on the seats when they come to the meeting, so they can ask questions if they have a question about some expenditure.
It's fine, yes. The board agrees, I'm fine with that.
There's an HOA document, so they have to get it. They want it.
Is it important to copy it, or would it be on the website and we would have a copy? I mean, it's up to you all. We're getting a huge copy, and you don't know how many are going to come. Hopefully, the room's packed.
Well, that's true, but if we put it on the website a week before our meeting as well, so that the community would have a chance to look at it and voice.
Why don't we start with that, and then
Okay.
see how well it's received, and then determine whether we need to continue a policy.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Again, I want the expectation to be clear, because it takes around the 5th or the 7th before we get our bank accounts to reconcile the financials. And it is usually right on the 15th before I get them. So it's gonna be very tight to get that 1 week in advance. In fact, it will not be possible in some meetings to have it a week in advance.
Oh, but
Okay.
as soon as
Yes.
possible.
Okay.
The idea is
Practicable.
we're getting them out, we're going to be able to see them, and I think that's the key. Any other board member have anything that they would like to discuss? I'll mention one other thing, is that the agenda of the board meeting, according to Robert's rules, has to be approved prior to starting the meeting. So we all have the opportunity to put things on the agenda, and it's not for the month following. It will be for the the meeting that we're going to attend. So, I believe the secretary and the general manager are going to be working on agendas, along with the rest of us, and we have things we need to put on. We need to get that information to them so that it can be discussed. And in the beginning, we'll probably all have a lot of agenda items. We can't have a 5-hour meeting, so we'll kind of have to prioritize a little bit. But I think we're off on the right foot. Okay, do I have a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, and it doesn't require a vote. Meeting's adjourned.